Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer too. I'm half crazy,
all for the love of you. It won't be a stylish marriage. I can't afford a carriage, but you'll look sweet.
Hello, Cubanwriter here with Darkling Faye,
Hello.
and we're reviewing the 8th episode of Iron Fist. And I have to say that in my opinion, it is continuing the trend of being better than past episodes.
Okay.
Oh, you don't think so?
For me, it brings me closer to the end of the series. Yay!
Well, in this episode, they make a trek to China because they decide that's the best way to get Madame Gao is to go to China.
Of course, because out of all of the warehouse facilities that she's doing her shipping of this synthetic heroin to, it makes sense that it's going to just be that one out of all of them.
I think if I was Iron Fist, I would have actually taken advantage, if I thought she was in China, to clean up all of her operations in the city while she's away.
This again was an episode that I didn't enjoy. I felt like we went backwards instead of forwards with the writing of the episode. The last episode was so well, and this one I feel like is going back to how the first two started.
Well, I think this is much better than the first two episodes, and I'll tell you why. We had a generally exciting episode with lots of action. We got to see a little more of Madame Gao and her operation. The plot line seems to be moving forward. And we got some good character development between Joya and Meacham Jr.
Yeah, some of your positives aren't positives for me, so we'll see how it goes.
Well, what did you find positive in the episode?
Well, the one positive I can agree with you on is Ward and Joy Meacham's relationship. I did feel like this episode kind of did show how the Meacham family dysfunction has always been there and how none of these people in this family really know or understand the other. I will say probably some of the best writing in this episode happened with Ward and Joy talking on a bench. And so I do like that. I like that you got to see how they really have spent their entire lives together and yet don't know a thing about each other.
Yeah, I really thought that was some positive character development between the two. Really establishes their dynamic. She's always believed something about him, and it was all wrong. She thinks he's brave, and he's really been a coward his whole life. She thinks he's driven and he really doesn't want to have anything to do with this. He's only doing it because of his father. He thinks that she'd like to live on a horse farm, and she's like, that was a childish dream. I really like the power I've accumulated here.
It's funny because they're both in a way projecting what they want onto each other. He wants out of the company and he wants to have some other life, so he's projecting that onto her. Like, don't you remember when you were a kid and you had other ideas of what you wanted? Like, he wants her to want that because that's what he wants. And she is driven and wants the company to be successful, so she keeps trying to show all of those type of personality traits on him because that's what she wants herself. So it's kind of nice that you get to see the opposite of what they want and pushing on each other in a way.
That's a very good observation and a good piece of writing from this episode.
I will say that was the best writing, was the dialogue that they had, that conversation that they had between. That was some of the best writing, but it doesn't make up for what I found lacking.
Okay. What's your next positive?
I did like that the series kind of does understand how the audience feels at times. And I'll say it's kind of nice when they can acknowledge maybe some of their own shortfalls. So when in the battle that Iron Fist had with the drunken guy, and he was like, oh, you fight like a kid having a temper tantrum, where like the audience has felt like this is how he has been for so long. It's nice that the series itself is at least acknowledging that, whether maybe they mean to or not. I did think that was a positive, that it didn't take itself maybe too seriously, because it did feel like a lot that he was like this child having a temper tantrum in the store.
Yes, and we're going to touch more on that in the negatives, but I feel like that character and also Claire Temple, the night nurse, have been used as kind of the audience's voice, being critical of the own show,
That's my cat, guys. Sorry. She likes to get in on the review, too.
Well, they're using these characters to be critical of their own show, and that kind of helps me to forgive them when they fall short, when they at least acknowledge what's going on.
I do like that, when shows don't take themselves too seriously and can at least acknowledge a little bit of maybe some flaws or shortcomings themselves, because that makes me feel better. I will say, though, when we're talking about, like, background characters, this is one of the things the show does that is also kind of frustrating but nice at the same time, is they have these kind of, like, background characters that you want to know more about. Like the drunken martial artist. I want to know more of his story and where he came from and that, and why all these people have this scarred up face and like what happened there. And like, I like that they have those little tidbits, but then it can get frustrating because you never get to know what those tidbits are. But it's nice when some background characters are interesting, that they're not just a background character that you don't really care about. It's nice when writers or the story can kind of involve you even in secondary or third kind of characters.
Yeah, he was made more than just thug number one. And I like the little tip of the hat to the Drunken Master series by Jackie Chan. I felt like that character was really inspired by that. And I was okay with them acknowledging that ancestry. Anything else positive?
Those are my positive, guys. I'm sorry. Did you have any other positives?
Okay, so as I said, there was a lot of action in this episode, and I actually felt this action was above par for this series. I liked seeing more of Madame Gao and her organization. I had some problems with her organization, which I'll discuss later, but it was just nice to see more of the hands operation in action. I feel like the plot is actually gaining momentum and we're going somewhere. I don't know where we're going, but I do feel like we're going somewhere. Things are happening. For a long time at the beginning of the show, I didn't feel like anything was happening.
I agree with that.
And of course, we are in complete agreement on the relationship between Joy and Meacham Jr. being fleshed out. We both think that that was terrific.
Yes.
Now on to the cons. I have 4 that I'll briefly outline.
All right, first.
Iron Fist is constantly telling us one thing about himself, but showing us another.
It's the writing. This series wants to be one thing, but it can't write that thing. So you end up getting something else.
Well, I actually felt like laughing out loud when Danny Rand said that he, over the past 15 years, had become a master of his emotions.
Well, I wouldn't say that. See, and he didn't say that. He said he was training to keep his emotions in bay, and that's exactly what he did. He did train for that, but then you also have to realize he's in a place, like, it's so much easier to keep your emotions in check, I think, when someone's just trying to beat you, but now you have all this sensory stuff that's going on that you didn't have before. You're in a big city. You're meeting all these people. You're seeing all these sights, all these different things. People are probably more scantily clad. You have all this, sensory stuff going on, and you're meeting people again that you haven't seen for like your childhood friends, all this emotion and stuff, and you're in your childhood house, you're back at your father's business that you've all of that's going to press on you and like want you to bring out your emotions. So it makes sense that he's going to feel like a child and having some temper tantrums and that. I get how like when he's in Kung Lao, he's going to feel like he's the master of his emotions. What do you have that's, going to try and challenge you?
Well, that is an interesting take. I didn't expect you to be defending the show in this regard.
Well, I mean, logically it makes sense when you think of where he was and what went on during that time to where he is now. Like, this is the first time as an adult that he's back in his like childhood city that he hasn't been. The first time he's back in a house where his parents aren't. The first time he's in an office his dad, was for years that he isn't. I feel like if I was in that, I'd kind of be like all those memories and emotions and all that stuff would like try and push forward.
So I guess you agree with the writing of him as an impetuous child who can't control himself.
Yes, that makes sense. It doesn't make me want to like this character anymore just because it logically makes sense. I went into this series thinking I was going to get to see the Iron Fist superhero, not Danny Rand, petulant child.
So you believe the impetuous child portrayal is authentic, but you would have preferred an inauthentic portrayal of a strong hero character.
Yes, that's what I want.
Well, Moving on to my next item.
Oh, right, let's go.
Madame Gao, to me, has a very strange idea of security procedures.
Yeah.
She has people with Tai Chi swords
Yeah.
in martial arts outfits standing in front of her warehouses and operational facilities.
Here, and I know when you said a positive was you got to have more Madame Gao, I felt like that was a negative in this episode because I felt like if we saw less of Madame Gao, I would enjoy Madame Gao more. And again, it's back to that inconsistent writing because here you have a character that's been established as being one way, and then all of a sudden, when you get to see her in this episode, she's like sloppy. None of it makes any sense. Her security is bare bones and terrible. All of the people in a facility go to lunch at the same time, which makes, by the way, no sense so that everything is clear. You have beggars that are in front of your building that can apparently easily be bribed for all the information on how your operation works in this building. It's nothing that this character that's been established in this series or other series would do.
I was really hoping the beggar would be feeding them information only to tell on them to Madame Gao, or that it would be some kind of double operative, but it wasn't. Now, I did like the drunk guy, the drunken master guy, because that was a non-obvious piece of security. That's what I would expect the Hand to use. Something you wouldn't expect to be a guard guarding a facility is some bum sleeping outside. Why have people in martial arts outfits carrying swords in the open? I don't understand. That just draws attention to your facility.
It is. That's what I meant, like, made no sense about this. She's been really smart in all of her other facilities where it's all disguised really well as being like a regular warehouse manufacturing type of facility that doesn't look like it's doing nefarious, evil drug things on the side. And the entire episode, this shouted out as, "We are doing bad things here! We are doing bad things here!" It didn't make any sense for anything that's been established. And these guards were not just like guards with swords, which obviously doesn't make much sense, but there's just a lone guy by himself with a sword that can easily be overtaken at any time, which is shown, and not to have much skill, which doesn't make sense with all the other people that she is shown to have around her. This character that you've established would never have any of this stuff. Like, she'd have better guards, they'd be better trained. And then let's talk about, since we're talking about this guard, the terrible 80s throwback chick-on-chick fight scene.
Yes, that was special. We see Colleen Wing fight guys all the time, so there was no reason to do the 80s throwback chick fight. And it's especially interesting because out of all the guards that Madame Gao employs, we only see one woman. And of course, that's the woman who enters into a sword duel with Colleen Wing.
Oh, she has to fight the girl. She can't fight anyone else. And he obviously can't fight anyone but men. Because, you know, what we saw would happen when he finally got to fight a girl once. It wasn't really a fight. It was just her trying to seduce him. I feel like if they could just get rid of those cliches and just have some originality to it, it would have been good. And I guess you're right. If the fight scene and the action that they had at least done for these two girls together was decent, that I maybe wouldn't have minded the cliche so much, but it wasn't.
I thought the fighting was okay, but once again, they have a person who puts up a huge fight against the heroes without establishing them as a superior individual. At least the drunk guy.
Yeah.
The drunk guy was established, you know, he's like, my master taught me and I keep the tiger inside me at bay, or the monster inside me at bay, or whatever. He kind of built himself up briefly before their fight. This random person with a sword, who was just like the male random person with a sword that they subdued earlier, we had no reason to believe she was special, and yet she nearly defeats Colleen Wing.
Right.
She wounds Colleen Wing early on. Colleen Wing is only able to prevail because Claire Temple goes in and helps her get her sword back.
Yeah.
And God knows how Claire Temple even knew she was in danger, because Claire Temple had to drive through a gate to see that she was in combat and then get the sword and throw it to her.
Again, it's all that cliche type stuff where the friend comes at the final moment and saves the day. Yay! Because they have to give Claire something to do so she can look kind of cool. And it just didn't work for me. I felt like if they just been a little bit more original, it would have done this series a better service than what they've done.
Now, on to my last item.
Okay.
I feel like the Meacham relationship is super frustrating because it's one step forward and two steps back with them. After that long conversation on the bench, I felt, okay, these characters are finally moving forward. They're going to develop their relationship further. But what happens? He gets to the hotel, crumbles to bits, and the relationship is left worse than if they'd never had a conversation to begin with.
Yeah, I feel like they just overdid another cliche with Macbeth, trying to do like, oh, the blood on my hands, the stain won't come out. And so now, like, I don't know how many times I have to see Ward now looking at the blood of his father everywhere he goes. Look, it's stained on my shirt. Look, it's going down the walls of the elevator. Oh no, oh no. And I was just like, oh, how many more times do I have to see some fake blood around here?
I thought we were going to get a scene from The Shining where the elevator doors open and a flood of blood washes through.
I totally wouldn't have been surprised with all of these, like, kind of past cliches that they decided to throw into this one episode. But my thing, too, that I really had a problem, one of my negatives that you didn't bring up is more boardroom drama. Yay! I can't get enough of the boardroom drama. I'm so glad that this is a main featured storyline and not Iron Fist. Good, because I know as an audience member, when I decided to watch Iron Fist as a series, I wanted to see Wall Street. And it wasn't even done well. Like, that was my thing. None of it was logical. Like, they're like, oh, we're going to give you this big settlement, but you both have to agree to it because I won't take it just with one person. Trying to get, like, the Meachams to work together or not work together, you're not really sure. And then when they, like, come to you and be like, I'll take something cheaper, he's like, no, I'm not going to. And just, like, you would take it. You would, if you were willing to give these people $100 million each, and one comes to you and says, listen, I don't want to have to take $100 million, I'll take $30 million, I'll even give you $500,000 out of my $30 million just so I can get the heck out of here, knowing that you've kind of fractured them, and even if Joy ends up staying on, she's not going to have what she had before to be successful because they really were successful because they worked together. They both had each other's backs and they both agreed with each other, and they don't have that anymore. So if you're left with one, you're not going to be left with the powerhouse, and one's probably going to fold. So why wouldn't you accept the $30 million?
What didn't make sense to me in that is they had done everything to split up the Meachams to make them fall out from each other. And then when they fall out from each other, the guy's like, I'm very disappointed that you fell out from each other. Your dad would be so sad. And I'm like, that's what you wanted. Why are you now chastising him for doing what you wanted?
It was the worst boardroom. It's like, I don't think that's how the board's going to work. Like, they would actually be happy that you're going to come to them with less money and that you're probably going to get both of them to fold if one does, right? It was just, I'm so tired of it. Like, get them out of the board, get them on the board. I don't care, but just get done with this whole company drama stuff. Like, figure out if they're going to be in charge or not in charge. It's not interesting. This is something that I think that they could actually do off camera. This would be a storyline or a plot that I think would be easily handled, the majority of it, off screen, where you can mention it or bring it up in little tidbits or like, oh, you know, they come together or something. You don't have to see like step by step by step. It just feels so overdone.
Well, when they came to them and said, take this offer for $100 million each or you get nothing at all, it would have been easy to skip all this by having her hand over her phone and say, look, I hired a private detective. They found all this dirt on the board members. You're not going to touch us or we're going to turn your lives upside down. And it would have accomplished all the same stuff without stretching it out. They stretch this out like taffy. I think it's because they have 13 episodes to fill and have 6 episodes worth of story. Well, I think we can agree that this was still better than the first episode of Iron Fist.
It's better than the first one, but I would lump this in with like the first 6 I didn't enjoy. I will say the really only one so far that I can really recommend watching was the last episode, and I really wish Ian Stokes was back. Come back, Ian. We miss you.
What would you give this out of 5 stars?
2?
2. I think I would give it 2.5. Because I did like the action that happened, even though it was cliched scenes. At least it was.
What are the major action scenes you said you didn't enjoy?
Which one?
The girl-on-girl action, which sounds a lot more exciting, guys, than it actually was. I actually make it sound more exciting.
Don't get me wrong.
Girl-on-girl.
I enjoyed the action. I did not enjoy the storytelling that went with that action.
Oh, okay. I'll give you that, I guess.
All right, well, that wraps up this review. We're now in the final stretch, the last few episodes before the end. Thanks for listening, and this will be Cubanwriter signing off.
Goodbye, darling.
Catch you next time.
But you'll look sweet upon the seat of a bicycle built for two. Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer, do.